Hey guys, Mr. Antoon here. Today we're going to start off on Unit 6. This is now the second quarter. We're going to be doing chapters 4 and 5. The first one we're doing is Civil Liberties. As you can see, the Statue of Liberty reflecting of civil liberties. So Unit 6, perfect timing, will be chapters 4 and 5. So this next test seems like it's less chapters, but you're also going to have to know the 15 Supreme Court cases that the AP College Board wants you to know. Okay, so remember, keep that in mind. There are 8 sections here that we can go through. We're going to kick off, probably do 1 or 2 right now. So the first one is the Bill of Rights. Trace the process by which the Bill of Rights applies to the states. And we'll get into that one again. So let's kick off Chapter 4, Civil Liberties. So what's the difference between civil liberties and civil rights? There's a little handout there. If you want to take notes online, you can, meaning I don't have online notes, but you can print them out and write them out if you want to. So civil liberties are protections against the government. So think of the Statue of Liberty. The Statue of Liberty can mean the Statue of Freedoms. So it was a beacon of freedom for anybody who was an immigrant who was coming into America through, obviously the Eastern Seaboard when they came into New York and through the harbor, and they saw this beacon. So it was about the government. These are protections against the federal government for the most part at first. Eventually, it was the state governments. On the other hand, Chapter 5 will be civil rights. And it's about how the government has to protect people, especially groups of people, minorities, have this equality going on between those groups. And we'll be talking about that. And with that, we're going to intertwine all of the Supreme Court cases. So here's a good way to understand all of each one of these. So civil liberties are the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, and they're legal protections against the government, especially the federal. So keep that in mind, federal first. These are limitations. It's what the government cannot do, and this applies to you, the individual, not the group of people yet. Civil rights, on the other hand, and you could see that MLK is the picture in the background, it's because he was the advocate, the lightning rod for the entire thing. He was the leader of the civil rights movement to gain equality for minorities out there, and that's what the government has to now do. So civil rights stems from the 14th Amendment from 1868. It's what the government must do to ensure equal protection, because that's the only word where the word equal is in the Constitution. It's protections against discriminatory treatment. It requires the government to act. And it's about the groups of people. So really, if you can't get this in your head, just think civil liberties are individuals and groups are civil rights. That's kind of how you look at chapters 4 and 5. So the Bill of Rights are the first 10 amendments that protect our basic liberties against which level of government? You could say it out loud. It's this national government, federal, okay, central government. It really wasn't about states yet. And this was like, you could see up here, it's in 1791 when the Bill of Rights was passed. It all was about the federal government first, because we were so scared of the federal government becoming overpowerful. We had these amendments added, and thank you, anti-federalists, for that. Here's an overview of the 10 amendments, the Bill of Rights. And this is what's interesting about it, is that number 1 is probably the greatest. Number 2, obviously meant for that time back then against the British. But again, it's become overblown today, where we now have, should we have the right to carry assault rifles? Should we have bump stocks and all the stuff that happens there? Quartering of soldiers obviously meant back then, unless we have an invasion from maybe China, where they come in and they take your house. You can't tell them, hey, I got the 3rd Amendment. They're just going to, take your house. And then from 4 through 8, it's all about the criminal process, the criminal system, where they start out at your house, arrest and searches, or search and seizure in a sense, then your rights as an accused of a crime, the rights of person for trial, and you can see again, I can't see it. So this is criminal trials, this is civil trials. 8 is about what the sentencing is going to be about. And then 9, or anything that's not in the Constitution about an individual, is the 9th Amendment or the People's Amendment. And then 10th is a very famous one. Remember, anything that's not enumerated in the Constitution is reserved to the states. That's the 10th Amendment. And it's very important to understand the 10th Amendment. It's a big one, even though it's kind of obscure. And then they can arrange them by function. You can see here freedom of free expression. Again, all those there. Personal beliefs, privacy. Then you can see again 4 through 8 will be defendant rights, and then the other amendments kind of scattered throughout. So this big term called selective incorporation, it's probably going to be an FRQ question. It happens a lot since the inception of AP government. They talk about selective incorporation. So what is it? It's coming from the 14th Amendment. And you can see there's two clauses there that where I'm showing you. Due process and equal protection are very, very big. So what is this? Let's define these terms. Well, selective means you pick and choose what you want. And it's SCOTUS that picks it. They pick and choose this case and say, boom, this is what we're going to deal with. Now applies to the states. Because remember, it's always the federal government first. So it's not automatic. Incorporation is to incorporate the states within the Bill of Rights. Because at first it was just the federal government, which again, when I started teaching this 6 years ago, I didn't know that either, which is awesome. We should be taught this more often. So it's applying portions of the Bill of Rights to the states via the 14th Amendment. And you guys will get that in a lot of your SCOTUS cases. But there's another part of the 14th Amendment. As you can see, it's about naturalization. Again, that's the part we're not really focusing on here. But again, if you wanted to know it, you could see how the two parts come together in the 14th Amendment. So why is it important? Well, my example of my SCOTUS case that I'm going to show you later is Barron versus Baltimore. And as you can see it disappearing there, Gitlow versus New York was the first time incorporation happened. They said the First Amendment protection of free speech was incorporated to the states now thanks to the passing of the 14th Amendment in 1868. So it took about 50 years, and then the Supreme Court said, hey, Barron versus Baltimore is overturned and Gitlow versus New York happens. Even though Barron's dead and doesn't get his way, you're going to realize that they're going to undo some of the stuff that they've done before because of the 14th Amendment. So when you look at this, what are some things you notice? Okay, well, what I notice here is that the Third Amendment is not incorporated, meaning it only applies to the federal government. So state troops can take over your house, I guess, unless there's a case where that happens and it goes to the Supreme Court and then they rule on it. So remember, it's all piecemeal here, okay? As we look down the list, grand juries, part of the Fifth Amendment, the Seventh Amendment about civil jury trials, they're not incorporated, as well as no excessive fines or bail in the Eighth. So just remember, not all the amendments are incorporated. Pretty interesting. And then if you ever see In re Oliver, like here, it means a decision by SCOTUS involving the application of the right to due process in state court proceedings. It's not the big deal. It's just more of a law speak. All right, 4.2. Let's talk about the first clause of the First Amendment. So it's the freedom of religion. The First Amendment has 5 major things, which is funny because our current Supreme Court nominee, who's going to be confirmed soon, Amy Coney Barrett, couldn't think of the 5. So it's religion, speech, press, assembly, and petition. So in these 5, notice I gave those as bigger and smaller. Speech is probably the biggest, then religion and press and assembly and petition. But again, know those. And there's the wording to the First Amendment. I'm not going to read this. You guys can look through this if you want to. But again, you just need to know those rights. So in the First Amendment, you can then go to the handout if you're going to do that. You're now going to see there's 2 clauses in religion. There's the Establishment Clause, which Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion. It cannot say Christianity is the #1 religion. Congress cannot do that. The president cannot do that, even though they've done it at times. If there's a law that comes out, it will be unconstitutional. The second clause, the Free Exercise Clause, where Congress shall make no law prohibiting the free exercise of that religion. Unless that religion is taking people's lives, some people will call those cults, where there have been groups of people who have committed mass suicide as a result of that they're infringing on their own right to life. This is interesting because it's allowing you to practice that religion, and Congress cannot interfere with that. So let's talk about the Establishment Clause. For example, school vouchers, where if you don't like the public schools you live in, the government, especially the conservatives and Republicans, would want you to get a voucher for the amount of money that you're being taxed on and use that voucher to send your child to a private school. And there was the Supreme Court case there in Zellman versus Harris. You guys can see that. I'm just going to put those up there. Doesn't mean you have to know them. I'm just giving you examples of them. That was 2002. So prayer in public schools. This is one of the 15. You need to know Engel Vital. We're going to present that in class. You cannot, in a public school, have any type of prayer at all, especially led by the school or led by a teacher, a bureaucrat. You cannot have this. Kids can pray together, but the school cannot do that, and we'll learn about that in Engel. Another Establishment Clause is Lemon v. Kurtzman. And in this one, the Supreme Court has created a test. It's called the lemon test. And obviously, we're using the analogy of a lemon. The guy's name was Lemon. But again, it tells you that the Supreme Court says that that law has to have a secular purpose. It cannot, the primary effect of it cannot advance or inhibit religion. And there's no excessive government entanglement with that religion. If it passes all three of those guys, it's a constitutional law. If it fails at any one of those, it's gone. So let's look at some examples. So the nativity scenes. If you have a nativity scene of the birth of Jesus on any public property, that is unconstitutional. That's entanglement. That's the government imposing that religion in that area, because you might not be a Christian at that school. And again, it's imposing that Christianity is superior to anything else. So again, public schools, at a private school, they can do what they want. At your house, you can do what you want. A public park, no. Okay? And you can see, again, Abbott was wrong to remove the mock nativity scene here. I'm just showing you some stuff that happened in 2017. So again, you're seeing how a federal judge came down to talk about this. Posting of the 10 Commandments. You cannot put these in courtrooms to some extent. Look, that is the Austin State Capitol. They have the 10 Commandments there because that is our heritage. Democracy came from Judeo-Christian and Greco-Roman thought. So therefore, they want to honor their past, but it cannot be front and center in the building with spotlights on it saying this is the end all be all. So you got to be careful of that one. Daily prayer to start Congress has been controversial. In God we trust on money could be the same thing. The study of Bible and religion as part of secular education is an issue. And you can see Trump's tweet there in 2019. He thinks that we should start making a return to this. Now, you can have a class, I've taught classes in the past where you study the Quran or the Bible or the Torah. You study that as part of your education towards what you're studying, but to make it mandatory would be something that would be controversial. And you can see here the Board of Education approved standards for Bible literacy class in Kentucky. Again, I'm just showing you some of the stuff that's out there. Georgia schools bar high school coaches and staff from praying with students. As you can see here on Twitter in 2017, it's happened. Coaches have lost their jobs. Here at Westlake, I know they pray, but who has to lead the prayer? A student. I know in college, at my college in Santa Barbara, we would pray before baseball games. Only the players. There were no coaches with us. So you could still do that, but it cannot be led by a coach, and it cannot happen over the PA system. Famous coach up in Washington, D.C. at Bremerton High School. He was fired for praying, and again, they're trying to appeal that. That was in 2019. So let's talk about the free exercise clause. Government cannot interfere in the practice of religion. So when that happened, Congress responded in 1993 when Clinton was president and passed a law called the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. Okay, well, that's cool. Congress doing that. Great. Thank you, Congress. And again, this ensures that religious interests are protected. They're just saying you're protected. Okay, and you can see all the in 2015, all of the issues where states have pending laws about this as well. Well, look, the House passed it unanimously, and the Senate passed it 97-3, and Bill Clinton signed it into law. And then what do you think the courts did? The courts
unconstitutional.
And said they were unconstitutional in 1997, 4 years later. It's not, even when Congress says you can practice free practice, you're not supposed to say that. That's entanglement. So therefore, free exercise, Congress can't do it because you're already protected under the amendment, the First Amendment anyways, guys. So here's some issues with the free exercise clause. Obviously, Cassius Clay, Muhammad Ali, converted to Islam, changed his name from Cassius Clay to Muhammad Ali. Clay versus the United States in 1967, where he got out of the Vietnam War as a result of his religion. Multiple marriages with Mormons. They can marry up to 4 people. Some of the Muslim faiths can do that as well. Those are issues. Illegal drug use. We're going to talk about Employment Division versus Smith, where they took drugs as part of their religious practice. Is that controversial? Amish don't have to send their kids past the 8th grade, and that's in Wisconsin versus Yoda. And we're going to go over that in a second. And then Jehovah's Witnesses and Christian Scientists, they refuse to get blood transfusions. They believe that science is not, you have to depend on God in order to heal yourself. So it's interesting to see what religions have done because that's their exercise under the First Amendment and protections. Okay, let's go over 4.3, the freedom of expression. One of my favorite ones to kind of cover. In this one, we're going to look at parts of the First Amendment. So again, here's what we're going to be talking about in your notes if you're going to take it. There are all different parts of expression, speech as well as press. We're probably going to split this in half because the first one's a lot. So freedom of expression, pure speech. Whatever you say through spoken or written word is protected at the highest degree. Face-to-face discussions, speeches like I Have a Dream speech by Martin Luther King, our classroom debates, and even tattoos. No, not necessarily that really good tattoo. By the way, I would smack his neck every day I saw him. It's a tattoo that talks about what you believe in. And what's interesting about this tattoo, even though it's a swastika, which used to be an auspicious symbol for Hindus, meaning a peace, it's turned into a negative one with the Nazis. And again, creative tattoo in terms of LOL, but again, it turns into the swastika in the middle. I don't know if you guys see that, but again, really good. It's protected. Symbolic speech is the second type of speech. And in this case, what are you allowed to do? It's nonverbal. It's your actions that speak, in a sense. It's generally protected, but not at the highest level of like pure speech. In this case, burning a flag in Texas v. Johnson, 1989, you're protected to burn the American flag. And there's Obama burning the flag. JK, that's really terrible. A Photoshop. I just had to throw that one in there because I thought that was funny. No, it's people in Oakland protesting, and they're burning the American flag, guys. I don't suggest you do this, but you have a right to do this. Again, that's what we're trying to talk about. Here's somebody in the Middle East burning the American flag, and karma came back and very quickly and burned him, whether that's funny or not. There is Johnson. Again, there's the flag he burned. He was protesting the Reagan administration, and he did that in Dallas, Texas. Here, again, there's so much in Texas in a lot of these major cases that we're going to talk about. The second type of form that we're going to talk about is Tinker versus Des Moines in 1969. These are two high school students that wore an armband which talked about peace in protest of the Vietnam War. Again, you're protected to wear these as long as it doesn't cause a major disruption in your high school. And there is a Tinker test. You never have to memorize any of these, but you can see that, again, as long as it doesn't incite any type of commotion or violence in your school, you can wear those symbols of symbolic speech. So let's look at some of the other things that you can do with this. Free speech and public order. If you shout fire or bomb, fire in a theater or bomb on an airplane, if you ever seen the movie Meet the Parents, he was carrying that on. He's like, it's not like I have a bomb in here. This creates a clear and present danger. And again, this was an issue that came out in Schenck versus the United States in 1919. We'll go over that one in the Supreme Court cases. And this is the whole idea. If it is abstract, you're allowed to have abstract speech about our government. You could say, I don't like our government. I'd like to overthrow it. I think we should have a revolution. But if you're inciting the violence in public, if it's now called, the clear and present danger thing has been changed to imminent lawless action, meaning it's going to happen and it's going to be lawless, meaning against the laws, you can't say assassinate the president. You can't even joke about it. You could be turned in, the Secret Service could show up and investigate that claim of what you're saying. Public places are protected. If you're at a rally here, you're protected for the most part. Private property are not as protected. So you guys can see that was Brandenburg versus Ohio in 1969, but just instances that will go for or against it. And if you know of Tyler, the Creator, South by Southwest, this was in 2015, he incited a riot and he was arrested as a result because you're not allowed to do that. So it's imminent lawless action that would happen as a result. So as you can see here, more of freedom of the press. You can't, this is like press ideas. And again, these are important First Amendment rights, and our democracy is built off of these. So if you take anyone away, like censorship, that's not good. So what is prior restraint? It's when you try to, the government prevents something from being published or censoring that, that's considered unconstitutional. And that came from Neer versus Minnesota in 1931. There are exceptions, times of war. Sometimes they'll allow you to do it, but later on, they might punish you after the publication of that or the censorship of that. So free press and free trials, you can see there's the OJ trial and there's Martha Stewart. Those can be covered publicly. Actually, this 11-month trial was covered on TV nationally. So everyone watched, 11 months of it, guys. It was crazy. So the press, they don't, even though that it's covered by the press, meaning that the reporters can go and they can cover every trial, these are the high profile ones that are covered for us to follow. So again, might not be protected from that. Obscenity, now you could see, and there's somebody doing an obscene gesture. This is interesting because this is something that, is it protected? That's the question you'd have. Behavior, language, like if you swear at somebody, can they arrest you? Can they do this stuff? These are questions that we're going to ask. So there's no clear definition on obscenity, guys. None at all. So how do we figure this one out? So if anything's offensive or disgusting by local standards, they can limit that. You might not have that free speech because it's considered obscene, or based on morality. NWA, which is the N-word with attitude. So these guys, as your age, as a high schooler, they came out. It was Eazy-E. I remember, you could see Ice Cube's famous, Dr. Dre's famous today. Eazy-E's passed away. He died of HIV. So these guys had, in Oakland, they sang a song where they were saying F the police. And they were warned not to say that because local standards saying they don't want to incite a riot. They said it, and the police arrested them. So it's all based on local standards. For example, in Miller versus California in 1973, a man mailed pornographic material in the mail, and a grandmother got it with her daughter, and they saw this, and then they caused a stink about it, and the Supreme Court ruled on it. But this is a really interesting ruling. It's not what you might think. They came back and said it's local standards that dictate it, but obscenity is not protected by the Constitution. Just to give you the heads up on that. And there's the Miller test. Prurient means anybody who's obsessing with sexual nature stuff, anything with sex. So what else? There's a term called libel and slander. You'll need to know the differences. They're very similar. Libel is written, false or malicious statements that could damage reputations, and slander is the same thing, false and malicious statements spoken. So again, you have to think about that. In New York Times versus Sullivan, you could see here on the left, it's about MLK. Public figures have a higher level of protection here because they have a reputation, and I'll show you some examples in a second. If you disregard the truth completely, then you're not going to be protected. So you could see actress Cameron Diaz said that she had, I think it was the Sun in Britain, said she had an affair while she was dating Justin Timberlake. She was bride-to-be, or he was engaged to her. And again, she could sue for that because she could be protected because it could damage her celebrity or reputation. There are general ones. Let me see if I have them highlighted. I don't. Let's see. If you say a doctor has fake diplomas on his wall, that is slanderous if you say it. If you claim that, where's the other one that was really good? Oh, saying a restaurant is serving meat from dogs because there's no dogs in the neighborhood. They keep the meat and they sell the meat. That's another slanderous one. If you write about it, it's libel, but if you say it, it's slander. Private individuals are lower for that. So let's look at that. Oh, I do have the highlights. Let's look at a celebrity example. When blood was found in the tub at an Intercontinental Hotel in London, the housekeeper claimed Lady Gaga bathed in blood as part of a satanic ritual. Well, let's be honest. I think that might help out Lady Gaga's reputation because she's very creative and very different. But again, she can sue based on slander. In this case, it's not really slander. I'm sorry, it is slander because she would say it. If you wrote about it, it would be libel. And then here's another famous one. Let's skip that one. Let's go to the First Lady, Melania Trump. And this was in 2014 or 15, right around when President Trump announced that he was going to run for office. The Daily Mail, I think that's also, no, it's here. They claim that she was involved in an escort service. And she filed a $150 million lawsuit. They privately settled the case, so nobody knows what happened, but she did win protection. Again, they apologized for that. So let's look at commercial speech. Commercial speech means public. And the FCC is our regulatory commission that protects, or regulates commercial speech. And this is like advertising on the airwaves. For example, it's the most restricted form of speech and regulated. Public airways, the radio, TV, to some extent movies, and we'll talk about that. There's a test for that as well. They now have a 7-second delay in live events in case something happens that they have to censor out because they have to protect people who are watching it that could be kids. Eminem, again, in his song, and you're going to hear it in a second, he talked about the FCC. Again, here it is. That song before. Again, he's talking about the FCC won't let him be. They won't give him free speech with that. Well, there's also another Supreme Court case, United States versus Playboy. the adult magazine in 2000, they made sure we had safe harbor hours. You could only show that adult content from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. You can see it right there. It's called safe harbor hours. Again, to protect kids who accidentally might be turning it on. So let's look at other commercial speech. We know these ratings. On the left would be video games. Again, a game like Red Dead Redemption 2 is a mature game. You have to show ID when you go buy it from a store. Okay, well, what's the one in the middle? That's TV now. Oh, no, that's movies now. And there is a NC-17 rating. I don't know if you've ever heard about it, but it's no child under 17 can get in there. And The Devil's Reject is a perfect example of this. This is a Rob Zombie film that I saw in the theater. Very, very graphic. It was actually disgusting. I don't think I'd ever want to see it again. But a woman brought in, I was with my wife at the time, and a woman brought in a stroller and like a 5-year-old kid to watch it. And I did go tell the management, and they kicked her out. It was wrong because the scene that was happening, I can't say it right now, it was very graphic, and no kid should be seeing that. That's why it's no child under 17, and rated R is 17 or older. So most of you guys can see the rated R films. And then TV has all the ratings as well. And this is the one like The Walking Dead when he used Lucille. This is God, I forgot his name already. This is where he used the bat that has barbed wire on it to kill 2 people in The Walking Dead. And this was very, very controversial. A lot of people said it was over-the-top violence. You didn't need to show it that way. But again, they warn you about this. They don't limit you. You know, a kid can still watch this at 10 o'clock at night. But again, they warn you, TV, MLA, mature language audiences only, in a sense. So you're going to have to be a certain age. So we do have that. All right. So we're going to leave off it there. We will cover the next few on the next one, guys. I will see you later.